AFWERX Austin at Capital Factory. So we're really excited to have everybody here in the room. I mean, this is awesome. We put this together, I mean, from the end of the contracting sprint, which a lot of the companies have been awarded to today, about 2 weeks. And for that convergence from an Sbir phase 1 right to customer discovery with Air Force customers and broader DoD customers from all around the DoD is super exciting. So we're happy to have you here. So, so why do we ask all you companies, all you non-traditional companies, companies that have maybe never done business with the DoD? So actually, raise your hand. Who has never done business with the DoD here? And obviously, we have a lot more companies that are setting up. So why would the world's greatest air and space force ask you for your help? Why do we want your technology when we have aircraft like the F-35, the most advanced jet fighter in the world? Well, what I'd ask you to look up that boom pod. So that boom pod connects to this aircraft, a KC-10. So a KC-10 is a military DC-10 variant. 70s, 80s technology that I had the honor of flying for 12 years in the Air Force. And so this goes to the why I'm super excited that everybody's here. So I flew the T-6. I was an instructor pilot at Columbus. Flew the KC-10, over 3,000 hours of experience. When I left the KC-10, I was an instructor pilot, aircraft commander, evaluator pilot. I was also an acceptance pilot for a newly modified KC-10, a brand new avionics suite. You can imagine how excited I was to be one of these pilots to test out one of these new aircraft. And so I went down to the acceptance area in Oklahoma City, walked into the cockpit for the first time of this newly modified KC-10, and I saw this. This is 2016 that I walked into this aircraft. And we took 70s and 80s technology, and we brought it into the 1990s. Why is that? And so I flew KC-10s out of Travis Air Force Base, California, a stone's throw away from Silicon Valley. Why is the tech refresh rate so quick? Why can the consumer market adopt technology so fast? But an upgrade for us is turning 70s or 80s technology to 1990s technology. So we have to find a better way to do things. So how do we get from this to this? It's an actually cutting-edge technology that gives our warfighters advantage over our adversaries, to allow us to protect this country like the way that all of us want. So we have a convergence of a lot of people. So this is only the start. So we get there by taking small steps. So it's going to be seemingly very complex. And there's a lot of particles that have to collide in order to make things come to fruition. And it's going to seem daunting at times, and you're going to get frustrated, both the company side, but also on the DoD side. This is hard work. But if you take small bites, things are possible. So I want to set expectations, and just to make sure that they're achievable, how do we get things started? So if you have one goal during this Collider event, the one goal being having just one collision, talking to one person that is outside your traditional circle. If you're a government, talking to a non-traditional company. If you're a non-traditional company in like education, maybe talking to a company in AI. But having that one collision. And in order to accomplish this, we don't have to wait long. I want everybody to stand up, all right? Let's walk over this first bar. So in your immediate area, is there someone? I'm guessing everybody has someone that they've never met before, right? So it's super easy. So turn to that person, shake hands, give them a high five, pound fist, do whatever you want. Introduce yourself.
Nice to meet you. You're doing good.
Tony.
Hey, Alex Haig, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
How's it going?
All right. So, I think this is a good start. So, now that everybody has accomplished the one collision, build on that. Over the next 2 days, you have an opportunity to attend breakout sessions, to interact with government, venture capital, companies. Take this opportunity in order to make that look like that. And so with that, please allow me to introduce the director of AFWERX Austin. So Matthew Scott, he was also the lead for the Sbir topic 19.2. So a lot of what you guys experience with the Sbir pipeline, the Sbir process, is all thanks to Matthew Scott. So with that, please welcome Matthew Scott.
While Tony brings up my slides, I wanted to say thank you for everyone showing up. He said, hey, I just wanted to throw a little gathering, invite all my friends. So y'all are all here just to see Tony. That's what he was telling me. One thing, this is a very momentous occasion. You may not realize it, so I just wanted to give you a little bit perspective of actually why you're here and how huge this event actually is. So I've been involved since 18.2. That's really when AFWERX got involved with the SBIR process. That started here in Austin, 18.2. Just over 40 contracts. Oh man, that was a momentous occasion. 40 contracts, 40 hours, that's awesome. 18.3, we get some more companies. Hey, we got some more. 19.1, I've been involved in there. So 19.1, I was also the PM. And we awarded 125 phase ones. We were blown away. I was like, that is such a lot. Tony and I immediately, so this just stays between us, that he immediately after that says, hey, let's start doing this collider things because we have so many people in this pipeline, they need to do this business development. How many are you expecting for 19.2? I was like, the team always takes bets on how many people we can get. And I said, I'm thinking we'll have about 125, 150 phase one companies. I'd say maybe 100 will show up. So we put 100 slots. Well, as we got closer, we realized in 19.3, of all the phase twos, phase ones, and STTRs, we had like 1,100 applications. Just in phase ones, had over 600 applications. I said, Tony, you have a lot of friends. We may need to expand the scope. So it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And here, I'll just say how momentous this is when I originally did the cut with my team, we were right around in the 200s. And I was like, we need the demand signal from the program offices, these focus areas want more. So I was like, okay. So if you actually talk to me in an 8-hour period, I was just like, okay, if you want a company, I'll get you a company. So, but anyways, I ended up with 321. phase one companies. And I remember calling a representative on our team that is in talks with Dr. Roper, and I was like, this is a lot of phase one companies that I'm having to manage. I don't know if I can be able to do this. And he goes, I just got off the phone with Dr. Roper. He said it's not big and fast enough. So that's where we're headed, and that's really why this is such a momentous occasion, because this is the first collider. There's going to be more of it in programs that Dr. Roper is going to talk about tomorrow of that's coming. But first, why are we, I know we're here for collisions of meeting people and trying to find phase ones to go into phase two, but why are we really here? So I wanted to talk about a little history, because thank you for supporting the Air Force. Thank you, but you're really supporting the United States of America in a national security issue. And there's a little story that actually I'll attribute to Jorge Manresa that I like to talk about, and that's who recognizes this. The right, Yeah, the Wright brothers. But actually, they started out as a bicycle because that's what everybody was using at that time in the 1890s. And so they were heavy. That to the right, that's the Wright cycle. But there was no requirement in the DoD for flying to do a plane. But there was people starting to dabble in that. And that's really where the Wright brothers said, hey, we can do this. So they successfully had this flight, and then they go to the DoD, and the DoD goes, we got this covered. We have this other company, Langley, with this aerodrome. They're promising us the world. Go do what you need to do. We have this solution. We're putting all in on this solution. So the Wright brothers did that. They started traveling around the whole world. France loved them. They were adored. DoD, still for years, don't want to talk to you. Until the aerodrome actually crashed and they had a scaling problem. They couldn't scale to the weight that they needed. And then they said, oh, they got reports, hey, France is really getting heavily involved in this Wright brothers stuff. Let's go talk to those guys and bring them over. They may know what they're talking about. So it's really, sometimes we're on DoD, we think we know best, but in certain aspects we don't. And we need to have that vision of, hey, let's talk to our industrial base, build it up. So after World War II, we were investing several R&D dollars into, but starting around 1980 and after, our dollars started reversing, where we started going less and less R&D dollars. What I just want you to see on this right here, this starts in 1980 on this chart, all those companies that dealt with the DoD. On the right, and that's in 2004, 5 players emerge that we mostly deal with. It's like the Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, some other on there. So it's actually dwindled to even less to today. It's an industrial base. It's a national security issue. And that's really what this is all about, is that AFWERX, the SBIR, is all trying to work to increase to reach out to the startups to say, hey, before you go somewhere else, let's talk to us. We want to build this relationship. We want to build the industrial base. Who recognizes this right here? Anyone? Raise your hands. Okay. Did y'all ever realize it says America Seed Fund? Like, what does that mean? Because a lot of companies I talk to, they hear SBIR and AFWERX, they think it's AFWERX owned or Air Force owned. Technically, that's not correct. So in 1982, it's a federal-wide program that was signed by President Reagan that was implemented for economic activity in the U.S. So you have to be a small business, less than 500 people, equity owned, at least 51% American, and then everything done in America for that company. There's a couple of exceptions, but that's the main thing. This is to generate economic activity where the federal government is putting in money. And that is actually a budget of approximately $2.5 billion, and then they slice it up with all the partners, and those are all the partners, well, not all, but the majority of the partners that are involved in the SBIR program. And the DoD is just one slice. And this is an older chart, but the DoD in fiscal year 15 was a 1 billion. It's higher now because it's a growing percentage, and as the budget grows with that. And then you'll also notice a coloration because the blue, the darker blues are actually grants. We technically don't give grants, we get contracts. So that's why if you've been in this SBIR system for a long time, you automatically think grants and the process. So this is really, and then out of that DoD, the Air Force is giving our slice of money, $600 million. So when we started in 18.2, that's when we reached out to the Air Force and said, our team, and said, hey, we think we can do this faster and better to utilize these dollars to reach out to the companies. So I just wanted to leave with 3 points. These are really our way forward on these 3 points. And one is being that we're going to have a really big emphasis on, we call it the triangle really, where it's, hey, you have an Air Force user, a customer, and then the company. So there's I'm going to do a lot more messaging on what an Air Force user and customer, so I just want to take 30 seconds and talk about that, is if I'm selling a medical device, class 2 medical device as a startup, I can go to a local office, privately owned, and go to that doctor and say, hey, will you advocate and use this? He's also, or she's also the buyer of that. But say I want to go to a hospital and go to the doctor. The doctor's the user, but that doctor's not the buyer. It's usually like the CTO office of the hospital. So I can go to the CTO office, and that's really the customer that's going to buy this, and the doctor's going to use it. But then if I want to go even bigger, maybe the hospital has a contract with a big manufacturer like Abbott's Labs or something, and they say, hey, if you sell to Abbott's Labs, they can cover, we have all these hospitals have contracts, and now you will be able to sell your product to all of them because you sell or strategically bought out by them. That's what really we're looking for in the Air Force. You could be at a squadron with an Air Force user and customer, but we want to see how high up on the customer scale you can go. So there's a heavy emphasis on us working with the program offices, the sustainment tail of these phase 2, because ultimately we're all going to be judged on how well we transition non-SBIR dollars to the warfighter for these capabilities. And that's what the goal is. So there's going to be a heavy messaging on that coming forward. Also, Dr. Rover is very big into pitch days. So you're going to see all these. We already have 6+ pitch days lined up. And that's really how you can execute to go to a phase 2 faster and get that demand signal from the user and the customers. So you can, while you're navigating through phase 1, it will help you with that. And then finally, since 18.2, we've had interactions and awarded contracts to over 700 companies. Including $19.2, we have matched over $60 million in third-party investments for this. And that's only the start. It's only going to get bigger for this. So I want to say thank you to all of you for joining. The next guest is Jeff DeGraff. I had the pleasure of spending a couple of days with him in Michigan. I'm looking forward to his speech, but he has been nicknamed the Dean of Innovation. I like that one, but he has a couple of other nicknames. But he's a professor at the University of Michigan. Also, he has worked with the majority of Fortune 500 companies, and he runs his own company, and he writes several books on innovation. So I think you'll all love his speech that he's coming up. Thank you.
I'm going to borrow the clicker from you. We got my pitch up here. Good morning. Has anybody talked to you recently about politics or religion? Has anybody changed your mind? No, I didn't think so. You know why? There's a concept called dominant worldview, sometimes called by strategists dominant logic, and it means that you believe something so strongly that you're blind to everything else. You know, whether it's Dylan is the greatest songwriter ever, or 80s hair band music sucks, or whatever it is. But it's much more than that. It means that you use most of your reason not to look for different opportunities, but actually to confirm all the same bullshit you believe. Now, there's a term for this that's even bigger. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And put in layman's terms, it means you ever notice the stupidest person you ever knew calls other people stupid on your social media. And what you do at the beginning is you try and inform them, you try and give them information, it'll change their mind. Does it change their mind? Never. Then you try and do what? You try and turn the noise down, and then eventually you do what? You unfriend them. The Spanish Inquisition couldn't have thought of this. On a dark night, on a dark road, the pathetic loser goes away. Now, we can see dominant logic in these kinds of exaggerated situations, but actually dominant logic goes on in our life all the time. I love angry Schopenhauer's famous quote, "Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world," right? And the point I'm going to make today is that dominant logic is way more than what most of us think it is, and it's probably holding us back. So first, I have to admit, I have a PhD in a technology area. In fact, it's in my PhD title. I'm a recovering technologist. So when I talk to people about innovation, they want to talk to me about gear. Do you remember shop class guys when you were in high school? They wanted to talk about Hemis and how these are the new guys. They want to talk about AI and AR, and they want to talk about how many MIPS and BIPs and whatever crap they want to talk about. and they say this is innovation. This is going to save us. We got better MIPS and BIPs than they do. Well, in fact, I think that's going to really hold you back. And I want to make the dominant argument very real to you in some very specific ways. What if Adam Smith was wrong? What if the wealth of nations isn't really created by competition? And I want to say I'm in good company. Since 1969, there have been 9 Nobel laureates who have said Adam Smith is wrong, and I'm going to prove that these 9 are probably right. Well, let's look at some companies, and let's look at how they were destroyed. Anybody remember Sears? Do you remember when Sears was a company? Do you remember that as recent as 10 years ago, Sears was a Fortune 50 company? Do you remember this? Interestingly enough, who killed Sears? And don't say Amazon. Amazon has only been cash positive for how many years? 5. Interestingly enough, Sears abandoned their online efforts, which they were industry leaders on, in 1993, the same year Amazon was formed. Sears didn't think there was a real future, but they dabbled in technology. Incidentally, all you in the crowd here, you're being dabbled with, right? Nobody doubled down. Nobody bet the farm on this thing. You know who killed Sears? Sears killed Sears. How did they get killed? Dominant logic. They believed that the whole world was going to be about shopping malls. They thought that war would be performed in the same way it always had been. And our friends at Amazon took a very different look. 55% of all retail on the web in the United States belongs to Amazon, as well as 55% of all growth. When the federal government comes around and goes, we're going to break these guys up, think about AWS. Good luck with that, right? McDonald's. I've been kicked out of 2 companies in my life. One is McDonald's. I came in and said, you're making people fat and your coffee sucks. They didn't like that. What's their strategy now? We're going to serve breakfast all day. You know what the worst growth strategy of all time is? To have an increasing share of a decreasing market. The best damn saddle maker in the world, Worthington Saddles, made 2 million saddles in 1900. They made 10,000 saddles last year. Who killed McDonald's? McDonald's said that coffee was a negative 1.2 growth industry. Starbucks said it wasn't. It became theater. Which would you rather invest in today, Starbucks or McDonald's? Now, the other company I was thrown out of was General Motors. I talked to a guy yesterday at AFRL in Dayton, Ohio, who was the chief architect of the EV1. Does anybody remember who made the first electric car? 1992, General Motors made it. It was called the EV1. They made 3,000 of them. It wasn't that they failed, it's that they succeeded. And what did General Motors do with the rest of the cars? They buried them in the desert of California. Oh my God. They got there first, the patents elapsed. General Motors was killed by who? Was it Tesla? How many cars did Tesla sell this year? 150,000 so far. What's their capitalization? How much money are they making? They adjusted upward to negative 490 million from 600 million in losses. Everybody following us? They're not making enough cars to make anybody have a dent in anything. Who killed General Motors? General Motors killed General Motors, but there's always a good end to a story, isn't there? Anybody been following what Mary Barra's doing? I think the empire might strike back. Luke, I'm your father. Fine, take a look. And there is a good story. One of the good stories of redemption is our friends at Microsoft. Microsoft was almost dead. They completely missed the cloud because to people my age, it looked like what? Centralized computing. Anybody old enough to remember when it had to go to the central computer? Yeah, us old timers do. Yeah, incidentally, Junior, we invented your world. Thank you very much. Yeah, we're old, but don't think we can't make that shot. We can make that shot. We invented that shot. You know, if we went to the moon and licked the commies and built the net, your idea of innovation is Uber. Get a life, right? So here's the thing. Microsoft misses the turn. One of my students, Larry Page, creates this little company called Google. Google all of a sudden takes over, right? Creates this huge juggernaut. But Microsoft has an epiphany and gets itself back in the game. So there is redemption. But each one of these companies is not destroyed by competitors. They destroy themselves. And this is the whole key to this discussion this morning. It's not about tech. It's about, can you get beyond your own dominant logic? I love this quote from Mark Twain. The trouble with the world is not that people know too little. It's that they know so many things that just ain't so. It's just not true, and I'm going to prove it to you. I spend a lot of time in Ann Arbor, even though I'm 2 million miles on Delta alone. I spend a lot of time in different parts of the planet and a lot of the big companies. What I hear all the time from the automobile industry as well, they can't bend metal. Well, this is the valuation of the top 10 automobile companies, and Apple alone is worth more than all of them together. Now, if Apple can't bend metal, what are they going to do if they got $1 trillion? They're going to buy everybody who can bend metal. Duh. Well, then I'm down here in Texas. Well, what about oil? You take the top 10 oil companies in the world and the top 5 FANG companies in the world. The top 5 FANG companies are worth twice what the oil companies are. Guys, the center of gravity has shifted, right? If you think that Texas and oil is where this is all going to go in the future, you're wrong. You're on the wrong center of gravity. Your dominant logic is holding you back. As Bo Schembechler used to tell me, if you can't see the linebacker, where is he? He's behind you and closing fast. Better grip your mouth guard and keep your dental work in. Now, I want to make the dominant logic thing more real. According to Wall Street, last quarter, BMW adjusted downward their revenue target by 9%. That's a big deal. The street is a lawless place. They will cut you and bleed you out. If you don't, they don't care whether it's tangerines or aerospace. It's all about what? Making money. Well, it turns out who's eating BMW's market? Is it Tesla? Is it who's actually taking the market? It's none of those. It's Uber. Now think about where's the innovation in Uber, right? Their IPO didn't go well. Is it a well-run company? No. Are they without problems? They got problems all over the world. Is it their app is so cool it looks like 1998 over-the-road trucking app, right? Where's the innovation in Uber? It's a social form of innovation. Young people, starting about 5 years ago, would get in a car with a stranger. It's the old Airbnb thing. If someone said, Jeff, I'm going to come to your house and use your towel, I'd take it in the backyard, burn it, and bury it. I'd sick the dogs on you. The notion is what happened had nothing to do with technology. It had everything to do with culture and the way people looked at dominant logic. They changed what cars do. This is true also for everything, the positive things in life to the negative things. Innovation does not happen in nice places. Emojis came from terrorist cells. Where did cryptocurrencies come from? Money laundering. Want to know where streaming started? The porn industry. Now, don't write down, Jeff said, go to the porn industry. I did not say that. Innovation starts where people don't have scope or scale. They have to compete on ingenuity. So it doesn't start in nice places. This is where you come in. Small companies, they have nothing to lose. You're not going to win a bar fight. You're too small. You're going to have to figure out something really clever to do to the big guys. Now, in 1992, the federal government came and talked to me about what actually constituted innovation. And I lifted half of my definition. This is what you guys have to deal with when you deal with the NSF and the NIH. Half of it from Marshall McLuhan. Last week, I was at the University of Toronto, the hallowed ground of McLuhan. Anybody old enough to remember who the old man was, Marshall McLuhan? The medium is the message, hot and cold medium, the Gutenberg galaxy. McLuhan wrote a book in 1961 talking about the internet. Talk about somebody who's prescient. It's like Oswald Spengler, who wrote The Decline of the West, who not only predicted the First World War, he predicted what? The Second World War, right? Almost 50 years ahead. So here's my two additions to McLuhan's. This is what innovation really is. First of all, innovation pays in the future. It's what's called a convex form of value. How much data we got in the future? Anybody want to bet on the future? What's going to happen with the recession? We've got the long tail recession. I used to be advisor to the Fed for years. When's it going to happen? Anybody want to bet? Bet the whole thing? What's going to happen with the president? What's going to happen with what's going on in Hong Kong this morning? Anybody want to bet the house? You don't, because why? Because it's an epistemological problem. There is no data on the future. Incidentally, what is the number one form of resistance to data? Right? Excessive data gathering. How many have read the report about the report? Anybody been to the meeting about the meeting? Yeah. Is it changing anything? No. In fact, you're stuck in the planning cycle. Number two, innovation goes sour like milk. It's only an innovation for a moment. A couple years ago, I'm the keynote speaker at the AMA, the American Medical Association. I'm in Chicago. I'm looking down Michigan Avenue. I'm pretty excited. There's a big, long line. It's about 8,000 people in the box, and I'm looking down the road, and I'm going, this is a big day, Jeff, until I realized what came out that same day. The new iPhone. What happens to the old iPhone the minute the new iPhone comes out? It's rubbish. What's Apple's product line? When's their new product line coming out, tech guys? September. Why? Just in time for what? Christmas. So all your kids can say, I don't want the old swag, I want the new swag. So innovation becomes a commodity very quickly. Number 3, which is from McLuhan, and innovation enhances something. What did Google enhance? Come on, there was Alta Vista and Yahoo and Lycos, and Google was undercapitalized. What did they enhance? The simplicity of the search. Was the algorithm particularly unique? No, it's been kicking around the academy for decades. The notion was they made it simple. And innovation has to eliminate something. What does your innovation kill? Anybody remember stock brokerage houses? E.F. Hutton, the quiet company? Yeah, they're really quiet now. Everybody had a back office trading system, right? The notion was they never figured they'd be disintermediated by their own people. And innovation returns us to something we believe we've lost. We don't want to live like Jetsons. What do we want to live like? Hobbits. This guy wants to have an island. He wants to be away from people. He wants to live in a tree. He just wants some quiet in his life. And if you don't believe that innovation returns to something, in my little town, the 2 most valuable drugs ever developed were in my town. The first is Lipitor. The second was what? Viagra. A little blue pill. And now how about their deal with Wrigley? Are you chewing blue gum, dear? Yes, I am, right? Put on some records, right? Whatever. We all want to be young again. And finally, an innovation reverses into its opposite over time. I'm waiting just before I got up here. I'm looking at all of you look at your phones. Remember when phone mail was going to set you free, messaging was going to set you free, and now you're all meaningless tools. Look at you. You're all slaves to the phone. It has nothing to do with technology. So how are we going to see the future first if it's not about that? Well, this is one of my other favorite philosophers, Alfred North Whitehead. The art of progress is to preserve order amid change and to preserve change amid order. Now, I want to talk about your life and I want to talk about your business in the same breath here. I don't know about you, but when you get to a certain point of life, particularly to young people, you will have accomplished a few things. And what will happen is the more you get accomplished, the more your life will be managed. Every second of your life will be accounted for. I have 3 people who count for my 3 organizers of my life. And every day I've got a little thing in my pocket. This is Jeff. If you find him in Austin, send him on to Orlando, right? Like I'm a 3rd grader. And my whole life is choreographed out. So they're trying to squeeze all the value out of me that they can get. But here's the interesting other side. The other side is I want to grow. I want to do something different. Maybe you want to start a bicycle company and you want to own a garlic farm and you want to write a crappy science fiction novel. I don't know. You want to do some stupid thing that you got in your mind. Now the point is this. Most of our lives are governed by maintenance, but innovation is a form of deviance. Innovation is a form of positive deviance. And deviance is created by deviance. And the only way to have innovation is to deviate. Now, for most people, this tension is terrible. Oh, I want to be something new, but I hate my current job. The truth of the matter is, and I'm going to prove it to you, innovation is actually created through this constructive conflict. Innovation is the result of constructive conflict. And what constructive conflict does is it gets you out of what? Dominant logic. And I'm going to show you this is true for centers like in the place we're in Austin here. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but I grew up in the world of big research centers and corporations and hurdle rates and all this stuff. But we're now living in the world of, of coins, collaborative open innovation networks, and idea markets and federation deals. We're looking at something very much like this maintenance versus this deviance thing. So we're on the side of deviance today, but what's the problem with deviance? If deviance remains deviance too long, does it ever scale? No. A lot of you are going to remain kind of small 5-people firms, or maybe as the large firms look at you and call you bottom feeders, which you're not, but that's what they're thinking. But some of you are going to get larger because at some point you're going to have to become maintenance, right? This is the deal of growing up. John Dewey, which I built my first Innovatorium site on the John Dewey School, which incidentally Chicagoans was not in Chicago. It was in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where he was 8 years before I was in Chicago. Conflict is the gadfly of thought. It stirs us to observation and memory. It instigates to invention. It shocks us out of our sheep-like passivity and sets us noting and contriving. This seems to me like a very American thing to say. It's very American. This is how we are. We're kind of a polite pushing and shoving people, aren't we? Right? This is our history. I want to prove this to you, that diversity pays. This is a map. It comes from our friends at the University of Toronto at City Lab. And it's a map of venture capital and where the venture capital is concentrated. And I think what's very interesting about this map is right off the bat, it challenges something about dominant logic. And the first thing it challenges is tax has nothing to do with innovation. In fact, when you look at the 10 highest personal income tax states in the United States, they actually disproportionately have more venture capital than the rest of you. Let's get rid of the tax argument. It's a bad argument. It's dominant logic. It's holding you back, right? The expensive places are getting more expensive, and they're getting more and more money. Turns out that the most diverse places in the entire planet have the most venture capital, disproportionately. I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It's so different than any city around it. It has 117,000 people. It has more venture capital per person than any city in the world right now, including Austin, right? What makes it different is we're different. Over half of all patents in Silicon Valley in 1915 were awarded to people who were not born in this country or are first generation. The whole history of immigration is the history of innovation in America. Why? Because they have a different dominant logic and the constructive conflict that comes to it. When it looks at what we're actually able to do in terms of creating this intellectual property, we're 8 times more effective than the next closest country, which is Germany. Diversity is our birthright. We are a heterogeneous society. It's part of what makes us great, right? But we have to include those people. Now, let's think about what we're doing today. It turns out that when we're trying to build innovation ecosystems, there's 3 basic components to that. The first is the discovery component. I work at the second largest research university in the world behind Johns Hopkins. No, it's not MIT and it's not Stanford, right? It's Hopkins, Michigan. But what's interesting about that is what you do in these big universities is what? Heavy lifting. Nerds everywhere, nerd armies, you know, figuring out how the molecule works. And all you guys, for all your big talk, you know who's really driving all this is material science. Material science allows the phone to do it. It allows the medicine to do it. It's material science. It's grunt work. But what happens is it has to go to some place that develops it, right? Places that actually, like Research Triangle or what's going on, or Silicon Valley, whatever. These places have to be able to take that raw, unlocking the secrets of nature and turn it into something. And eventually it comes to places like this, where we're starting companies, we're getting things going. But here's the big issue. If the dots don't all connect, if you're creating a lot of new stuff, but you're not getting a good look into a research lab, what's it tell me about the magnitude of your innovation? Not very big. You're on the application side. You're on what we call the pull side of innovation. What happens if I'm stuck in a dumpster diving in the University of Texas down the road here? Not very big because it never comes to market. Is everybody following this? So you have to have all 3 steps in order to cross the bridge. Now, I did some research starting in the early 1990s with a bunch of researchers, including my wife here, Stanny, and I had a revelation. We started looking at innovation indexes against the Russell 2500, the growth index on Wall Street. And you know what we noticed? Out of all the innovation indexes, it had only beaten the growth index, and this is like 300 shots on goal 6 times, which means what we believe about innovation is absolute bullshit. Innovation has to, do we agree innovation has to pay? It has to work. It has to have a result. There's got to be a gumball at the end of this, right? It turns out when we started looking at conflict, contrary indicators that usually never show up together, displace each other, we only lost to this index 6 times. So this is not a Myers-Briggs test. I'm an ENTP or an INFJ. This isn't a socially polite thing. This is talking about why conflict pays and how conflict pays. So let's introduce the model. This is often called the competing values framework. You probably learned this in graduate school. It's often called the innovation genome. I'm the 3rd researcher on this model. We're going to talk about these three levels, and we're going to talk about these 4 worldviews and how these worldviews collide. There's the create worldview, which is we're talking about today. Oh, look at all the great stuff we're starting. There's the control worldview. Can we build the damn thing? That's why Matthew's right. You only have 4 big contractors. Can you build it? There's the compete point of view, the street. Are you paying this quarter? There's the collaborate point of view. We're going upstairs to the collaboratory here in the University of Texas. You know, are we developing sustainable capability? These things are not polite style issues. These are wars because one form of value is destroyed by the contrary view. I want to repeat that. This is not about style. This is not a typing indicator. This is forms of value destroy other forms of value. This is what everybody who's ever traded on Wall Street knows. There's bears and bulls, right? It's not about style. Are you an upside trader or are you a downside trader? Now, it turns out that there are 2 basic conflicts. The first conflict is about how much innovation. So those who are in the room here going through the collider, you're on the green end of this. Radical. I'm going to be radical, man. That's what you're going to pitch. Look at my radical solution. It's great. Love radical, man. What's the next question you're going to ask for on the other side? Can you build it? Right? The Air Force has to build a Death Star out of this, guys. You know, at some point, you got to join the empire. I'm sorry. You can't just be the Rebel Alliance. Right? That's Magna. You got that one, the Air Force people. The other is how fast? Is this, are we being attacked cybersecurity tomorrow? We got to have a solution in the next 90 days? Or is this that we have to have the ability to offset these solutions for the next 9 years? There's a big difference, isn't there? This is the wars that you see in organizations every day. Now, this happens at 3 levels. The first level is you. Here you are in the audience. Look at me. I'm practically perfect in every way. I'm Mary Poppins. I'm Spider-Man. Everything needs a web. I'm Hulk. Everything needs to be smashed, right? Look at me. But then you all belong to organizations that don't necessarily value you. They have different ideas or different worldviews, don't they? They're holding me down. The man is holding me down. Yeah, the man is going to put a can of whoop-ass on you. The man's going to hold you down forever. And then finally, there's the uncaring world. Nobody cares about what we do in this world when it comes to actually what's going on, whether it's a recession or a war or a pestilence. It goes on. Now, here's the point. Innovation isn't born from freedom. It's born from these constraints and conflicts. That's what we're going to have to harness productively. So how do we do that? Well, let's start with the green or the forward position. Most of you in this room, right? It's about what we're going to call the create position. It's all about being unique situations. The Air Force needs something really breakthrough, and the Air Force needs something really different. So we're all here for that. And what kind of organizations do you have? You have ad hoc organizations. We're making it up as we go along, man. We're fluid. Our mixtape. Look, we got piercings. We have tattoos on our eyes. We're cool. Got it. I built a lot of these labs early on, yeah? And we're artists, man, because it's all about creativity and discovery, and the man's holding us down. So the magnitude of this is really high, right? The whole idea of the momentum is kind of medium. You're not that fast. You think you're fast. But the risk is super high. Think about the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. 5 years ago when they discovered the Bose-Higgs, when they fired it up, 7 Nobel Prize winners, 7. Anybody remember what 2 of them said they were concerned about? They thought it would do what? Yeah, it'd create a black hole. They bet a beer and pulled the switch. See you in hell, Jurgen, right? These are these guys. They're going to drive the Harley into the pool tonight. So watch out for these guys. So these guys are all about design thinking. This is my friend Tan Lee. You've probably seen her on PBS lately. She just had a baby 2 days ago. Really wonderful, brilliant woman. She's the one that took all the EEG stuff and turned it into the chemoelectrical stuff that makes the ball roll around. And now Facebook's trying to get into it. What I call MacGyvering. Classic kind of green move. This isn't really as cool as it could be. Well, let's look at the opposite. Let's look at the empire, the control people, the big University of Texas down here, those Longhorns, hook 'em horns. They're what we're called control. Now, the first group, the create group, is held together by vision. You're all visionaries. This group is held together by process. They're held together by process for a reason. They got a lot of complexity in their life. They have to make a lot of dots go together, our poor friends at AFWERX. So they're all about predictability. They're all about scalability. They're going to be cautious. They're not going to build something that when it gets battle tested, we're going to put people in harm's way. Things have to work. This is going to be very hierarchical. We got to know who we talk to in the great chain of command. Whose ring do we kiss? Who do we genuflect to? Do we kiss the floor? What do we do? And because it's all about efficiency and quality. And finally, they're all about security and productivity. These people are not radical innovators, and they're not fast, but they're low risk and they scale well. Do you feel the tension between these 2 first groups? Right, between what you're doing and what the Air Force ultimately needs to do. My favorite, I was in Seattle the other day, Amazon Go. Anybody been up there? It looks like the holodeck from Star Trek, and it looks like a Tesco. So I went and bought a salmon sandwich, and I'm waving my phone around like an idiot, and the woman who's kind of patrolling the floor goes, "Grandpa, put your phone away." I'm like, okay, there's sensor devices everywhere. Well, where's the innovation? It's all in the tech, supply chain, back office procurement, right? That sort of stuff. It's still innovation and it's scalable. Why are they building these Go's? Because there's a Whole Food in your neighborhood and it's coming to you. Everybody get this? That's the next phase. The empire always strikes back. Now, do you feel the tension between radical and scalable? That's the first worldview we're going to have to do. And what I'm suggesting is this. If you're the radical person, you need a scalable person. If you're all about green, you know, we're cool, we're green. Where's the guy who's built 20 of these in the past? He's probably old, but a Budweiser jacket and a lot of scars. Or it could be a woman too, right? Who is the person? Because you're going to have to build the damn thing, right? They don't just want the cool stuff, they want it to work. Now let's turn to the other axis, the axis of compete. Compete is held together by goals. I'm a baby boomer. We're the generation of goals, right? We're all about goals. We grade on a curve at Michigan. I was an All-American wrestler. You know what really drives me crazy when my kids came up? We all get a ribbon. No! No! You go to therapy or learn to drink, you loser. That's what you do. You kick ass. That's what you do. You kick ass. I do this program with Twyla Tharp, the Broadway choreographer, and she's the most blue person I ever met. You got to be better than the boys. That's what you got to be. You just got to be great. She's a terrific woman, right? But the notion is this is about contentious. This is about fighting. This is what boomers do. This is why you hate us millennials. Everything's a competition, isn't it? Everything's a race. Yeah, look at them. That's why we hate you. Too bad. We built your world. You got to go to a good school because we were like this, right? So it's all about being aggressive and demanding. And think about the names of the people who run these corporations. You think about, they're gangsters. The Great White Shark, Hitman, Chainsaw. These are these guys. All about the market. They're all about speed and profitability. They're all about show me the money, top 5, bottom 5. This is this group, and these people are athletes. These are the annoying people in your life who run marathons. Why? Because it's a goal. It's a stupid goal. Drive. Don't run a marathon. These are these guys. This is the American culture we're leaving, but it's the American culture of my generation. I want everybody to get this. This is the dominant culture of my generation. The magnitude is medium. I'm sorry, Blues, we're not that big of innovators, but we are moderate innovators. What we are is we're wicked fast, right? Do it now. None of this Eckhart Tolle, the power of now. Do it now, or I'm going to kick you in the ass now. That kind of now, right? And ultimately, this generation's volatility, their sustainability is very low. We divorce more, we hurt each other more, our stock company betas are very high. So the notion is this is my generation. This is one of my favorite examples is our friends in Cleveland. Everybody progressive, remember they invented the first thing you plug into the car that said, are you a good driver? What happened if you were a good driver? You got really good rates. And what happened if you were a bad driver? You went to Liberty Mutual, which has accident forgiveness, right? What are they saying? We got rid of all the losers, right? The bad drivers are all gone. Think about it. Really profitable business. Now, this is the next generation. This is our children in general. In general, I'm talking, of course, obviously in general stereotypes, but I'm trying to have a little fun with this. Collaborate, held together by values. So I'm at a restaurant the other day with one of my young people that works with me, and she asked, was this a free-range chicken? I start laughing. I'm like, what was his name, Sebastian? Did he go to private school? How do you treat him before we killed him and ate him, right? Her view is values. We want to we hopefully treated these animals right, which is a good thing to want, right? But it's very much about cooperation. It's about belief systems. It's about lifestyle systems. And if you don't believe this, look at the candidates that millennials want for president versus the candidates that boomers want. Is everybody following us? This isn't just about people. This is about a worldview. This is about dominant logic. Is everybody getting this? This is dominant logic, right? The notion is we're all about community and knowledge. So young people, do they recognize intellectual property? No. Why? Because intellectual property is to be what? Shared. We need to share it. Incidentally, Chinese culture is not hierarchical, it's clan. Right? This is what people get wrong. There are 53 words in Mandarin for who are you in the family. Are you the rich uncle we suck up to, or are you the crazy uncle we avoid? Who are you? Right? This is the peer adversary. And these are sages. They're all about capability. They're all about community. So their sustainability is tremendous. These are the best networkers in the room. Get to know these young people. They are great networkers. They connect the dots better than anyone. The notion is when we start looking at how fast are they? They're super slow. Does it make you crazy, boomers? They're slow. Oh, I'll get to it when no! And they're all so positive. Oh, you can do it. And what are the boomers saying? No, you can't. You totally suck. I cannot believe that you're doing that. And of course, ultimately, their sustainability is very high. Now, of course, the same issue applies here. One of my favorite stories is from IDEO. And one of the things that Dave Kelly did, he had a problem at the Mayo Clinic, and the problem was patient experience. And so what he did was he had the doctors live for 2 weeks in the Ritz-Carlton. And then what do you think he did next? Had them live in their hospital bed for 2 weeks. And what do you think happened? Search and reapply. They had a few revelations, didn't they? Yeah, and all of a sudden patient experience went way up. So this is the second tension. Does anybody feel the tension between short-term performance and long-term development? Now, as I said in every one of these tensions are what? Good. Boomers, find millennials. You need them. Millennials, find some boomers. You need them, right? Crazy, wild-eyed, pistol wavers. You need some red guys. Red guys, you need some pistol wavers. Has everybody got this? It's the person that makes you insane that you need. The people who like your Facebook page and think your ideas are great, they're wonderful if you want to be feeling good about life. My advice to you would be get a dog, right? But if you want to be successful, find the loyal opposition. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is very simple because what we're talking about is the United States military, and your dominant worldview creates very dangerous blind spots. They're extremely dangerous, right? So if we get stuck on technology, we're going to be stuck there. This is my favorite quote of all time from the Nobel laureate Bertrand Russell. The whole problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are always so certain of themselves, but wiser people so full of doubts. I hope that you become paranoid and full of doubts because that's how you're going to succeed. The over-optimistic innovators are the first ones killed. How you innovate is what you innovate. Let me repeat that. How you innovate is what you innovate. All four of these worldviews are like tools in a toolkit, a hammer, a wrench, a saw, a screwdriver. They're all valuable, but they're not interchangeable, and I'm going to show you why. So when we start looking at this, we've got the creativity point of view, the tech view, the money view, and the people view. And as you look at the new world of work, you can see these things emerge. Each one of these has a chip into what they think the next world's going to look like, right? They're playing for the future. And each country has its own dominant logic. And this shifts, of course, over time. And I'm talking in very general terms because every culture has all four dominant logics, but they have a dominant logic. So Americans' dominant logic is very blue. Why? Think of our stock exchange. Think about the Great Recession when we laid off 6.5 million people in 3 months. Think about our culture, our gun culture, our culture about pushing and shoving. It's our way. We're extremely competitive. It's our culture, and there's a reason for that. Think about the Chinese, the peer adversary, which has a very different culture. It's been 3,800 years, right? It's pretty, that's the longest running Broadway play ever. It's working out for them. Thank you very much. Do they compete like we do? No. They compete in a very different way through clan relationships. Think about what's going on in Israel, right? Why is Israel such a great innovation juggernaut? Take a look at it on a map. Look at who's around them, right? Yeah, you can bet that the only advantage they have is what? To be different than the other guy. And of course, take a look at our friends in Germany right now. As Europe is falling apart. Take a look at the whole German mid-cap kind of companies and how they've developed. So you can begin to build a playbook around what people are likely to do. What you need to do on an individual level is you need to take a higher point of view. You need to look at this from the standpoint of what your deficiencies are and where your blind spots are. So what can you do? One, assemble a diversity of perspectives. When's the last time you changed the gene pool? And if you're a green startup company, that means hiring a red sort of somebody who knows the industry. And if you're a red military, it means going to talk to the young people who do this, and so on and so forth. Engage in the conflict. I would tell you right now that I believe what's happening in Washington is not engaging in the conflict. Everybody's yelling across the fence. Everyone's meeting in a cabal to get the other guy out. No one's having the discussion. Think about health care, right? Think about, is it all about the government or all about everything should be free market? Those are really our choices. Think about the $1.5 trillion in lobbying that we've spent. That's a moon launch. That's something that could have got to a third way, a better way, a different way, instead of trying to defend your stupid dominant logic. Establish a shared vision. We want to take care of the kids. People should have health care, but it's got to be affordable. We don't want to wreck the system that we've got. There's got to be a way to do that. Let's get to the next place. And finally, construct some hybrid solutions. That's what colliders are about. Meet other people here. You didn't plan on meeting them here, but it's like love. It's kismet. Hey, there's two companies here that we should be getting together with. Yeah, forget Tinder. Hook up with these guys, right? Now, I want to talk a little bit about the strategy of this, then I want to give you a couple of blessings and let you go. First of all, you are in the forward position for innovation for the Air Force. You're highly diverse. You've got radical ideas. You're relatively small. The problem you're going to have, Greens, is you're orphans. You don't relate to anything. You don't have a line of sight to the War College. You don't have a line of sight to the strategy of the United States Air Force. You don't know what's going on. So your problem is what? Better get to know some of those people that do, right? Middling positions, the blues and the yellows. Blues and the yellows have a problem. First, it's dogs and cats. Business plan versus getting the right people on board. Second problem is it's the longest cycle of the innovation process, often called Death Valley or the bottom of the bathtub, right? The notion is that project's going to take you 3 times longer than you thought it was and 3 times as much money as you thought it would, right? Because that's the reality. How many been on a project that lost momentum? It's like the gates of Harvard, the old Dante quote, abandon hope, all ye who enter here. The purgatorio, right? It's purgatory. Finally, the aft position, the Reds, our friends at the Air Force, the big companies that are here. What's your problem? You didn't see it coming. You're so optimized, you didn't want any deviance in your life. How does it fit with our existing program for this? No, it's not going to fit with that. You're going to have to make some friends with these blues and yellows. So the notion is it's like a big funnel. But I come back to my triangle before, my pyramid before, which is each step requires that it has a line of sight to the next. Now, this is an important slide, and that is, when do people really change? Do they really change when things are great? You change when your life sucks. You change when you get a divorce, you lose your you lose your house, you lose your job. Why do you change when your life sucks? Because the risk of trying something radical and the reward of staying where you're at is reversed. That's true if you're a company. Anybody remember what Apple was trading at in 1997? I sure did, because when I got in there, it was a shitstorm, right? The notion was trading below $5 a share. What do you do when you're almost dead? In the words of the poet from my generation, when you ain't got nothing, you got nothing to lose. You got nothing to lose. You take the safety off and you play with a live round. You start firing back. The other time you change, Elon Musk. Oh, I'm losing money at cars, but people don't seem to mind. Now I'm going to lose money at space. And people don't seem to mind. Remember last year? Oh, they blew up on the launch pad. $1 billion. Oh, that blowed up good, didn't it, Clem? Yeah, blowed up good. Right? Now he's doing the whole neural net thing. They don't seem to care. He's throwing sevens every time. Here's the point. Forget the 80-20 rule. It's a terrible rule. It's a stupid engineering rule. Forget the 80-20 rule. It's a 20-80 rule. It's easier to change 20% of the Air Force 80% than it is to change 80% of the Air Force 20%. Let me repeat that. It is easier to change 20% of the Air Force 80% than it is to change 80% of the Air Force 20%. And this is something people get wrong all the time. Innovation's not an upcycle phenomena. It's a downcycle phenomena. Innovation happens when risk and reward is reversed, right? This is what we get wrong. And finally, this comes from one of my heroes who's recently been resurrected along with McLuhan, and this is old Joe Schumpeter. Anybody learn about Schumpeter when they were in college? Old Joe? Yeah. Schumpeter was a crazy Eastern European like my mother, right? Hand waving, you could see him sitting in Prague smoking like this going, "You Americans make my ass twitch." This guy. And he writes an unreadable book. If you ever had to read his book, it's ridiculous. It rambles all over the place. I can really relate to this. But basically, Schumpeter says that organizations do not grow in straight lines. He's the guy that resurrects the term entrepreneur. He says they grow in sigmoid lines. He says they grow ballistically. And what Schumpeter says, I'm putting my model on old Joe's model, he says, organizations are started by people like you. He said the problem with people like you, though, is you're ideaholics. He says then you need those blues, those money guys. And the money guys come in and they do what to the 30 ideas you got? They make them 3. And you hate it. Tinder and Spark. Boom, we get fire. And then what do we have to do? We have to get all the yellows on board. We have to make sure we got the right talent. We're selling the right people. And then what needs to happen is we need to get the Reds on board because the Reds need to scale the thing and make sure that it works in combat and we don't kill our own people and things. And we're finding it works with our Office of Budget Management. And Schumpeter calls this the point of creative destruction. And Schumpeter famously says this about dominant logic. You see this quote everywhere, but it's actually right out of Schumpeter. The seeds of our undoing are sown at the pinnacle of our success. McDonald's, Sears, General Motors, Microsoft. What he says is at the very moment that you need to get to scale, every system that they've got, every capital acquisition process that they've got, every person on that committee that they've got, every metric that they've got is designed to do what to deviance? Squash it. So here's the point I want to make everybody understand. You're in a very wonderful position, and that is they're inviting you in, but every system they've got is going to do what to you? It's going to push you back. It's going to try and squash you. Now, you have 2 choices. You can either be, these fans hold me down, or you can do what? you can use the conflict constructively, right? That's my challenge to you. It's easy to whine about it. The issue is they need your help. They've invited you in. They've given you capital. The notion is, but you have to understand the system that you're walking into. No one's going to give you a royal crown and say this is all great. So we're going to have to pull, which is what you're going to do, pull new technologies from new markets. You're going to have to push the stuff that comes from the great reservoir of technologies and research that they've got. You're going to clash with companies that are in the room here. Some of the companies in the room are competing against each other, and you're going to have to connect with each other. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time on mistakes and what you should do because I think you already know this. I want to leave you with a few pieces of advice. First of all, ride what moves. One of the big mistakes I think people make is they say, I'm inventing the future. Nobody here invents the future. The future is a big wave. If you ever watch a crappie surfer surfs the same way every day. You have to know a wave before it's a wave, and you have to be able to ride the wave. That's what you have to be able to do. What's going to come next? Right? What's next? What's next? And if you have an idea of what's next and you're stuck with it, good luck to you. I used to be on the Aspen Institute, the famous group that talked about tomorrow's corporation. We got everything right. Everybody loves to talk about us, except what? We missed the collapse of the Soviet Union. Smartest people I ever met, right? All these presidential scholars were on this big thing. We're professors. We missed it. Number two, the cavalry ain't coming. The Air Force here brought you in. Cavalry ain't coming. You ever see the old John Wayne movie? Walter Houston, Gabby Hayes rambled. The cavalry ain't coming. Cavalry ain't coming. What does it mean? Run, Forrest, run. Where are you going to run in the global market? I'm like the other one. I'm going to fight the man. You didn't even see the man. Man's going to whoop all over you. The man, you're not going to fight the man. The other one's what? I'm going to roll over. Or you're going to what? You're going to model the behavior that you want the Air Force to take. You're going to model what you need to see from them. Master the art of so do too. See one, do one, teach one. I didn't get to be the professor I am on my own. Rudolf Arnheim, the founder of design thinking, was a Holocaust refugee, was my doctoral advisor. C.K. Prahalad and Bob Quinn brought me to Michigan, the most famous innovation strategist of the 20th century. I learned from other people, and I still do. And young people, I'm always playing with you, but I learn a lot from you. I learn a lot from you. So in my labs, I built these labs so I could learn from you. But the issue is, where are you learning to be an innovator from? And that's part of what colliders are about. Hide inside Trojan horses. One of the things that you should learn right off the bat is that there are all kinds of big projects the Pentagon has, and they're not about innovation, but they're unable to succeed right now. They're not succeeding. So what you're going to do is take your project, and you're going to put it in their project. And you're saying, Jeff, that's sedition. No, that's doing the creative work the organization can't. It's not sedition. We're all with you. We are friends. But the notion is sometimes friends need help, and they need help in ways that are not the normal ways. Fail early, fail often, and fail off Broadway. When Camelot opened, the musical, it opened in Toronto in 1959. It was 7.5 hours long. Went to Boston, 4.5 hours long. Went to New Haven, 3.5 hours long. Lerner and Lowe were freaked out. They cut it into little 5-minute strips and put it on the old Ed Sullivan Show. Became the soundtrack for the Kennedy administration. What would have happened if they would have started this at 7.5 hours on Broadway? It closed the same night. I worked on a project called C2. I work on a lot of projects. One I can talk about, C2, you know it as Coke Zero. Right? The interesting problem with Coke Zero was what? Right? Coke is a great company. They get a lot of things right, but the problem was they couldn't figure out what wasn't working. So first thing we did with the project was we took it to the World Cup in Tunisia, and we hit it. We worked it all out, brought it back, and by its test name, Coke Zero became one of the big sellers for Coca-Cola Company, right? Show and tell. Steve Jobs was a genius at this. When I was very young, I was lucky enough to be an advisor on one of his committees. I asked to Steve Jobs. Jobs, famously, one of my favorite things he ever did was, anybody know why the iPod looks the way it does? Anybody read Walter Isaacson's book? It's a true story, incidentally. This is how I got to know Dave Kelly in IDEO. It was carved out of a bar of ivory soap. Can you imagine that? Call Clem, we're going to do some whittling, right? That's what right? Because most of your brain, most of those occipital lobes are used for two things, to make pictures and to move your fine digits. That's what they're used for. So the notion is, when you start talking about innovation, stop talking about numbers and swag and all the kind of tech crap you like to talk about, and start making pictures. You have a dream. Talk about a dream. Have a narrative arc. Show what it's going to look like, because there is no data on the future. Leave room for the stuff you don't know now. You're all here thinking you got an answer. I'm thinking you got the first step towards an answer, which there are 10 more steps, which you probably don't even know. You don't have an answer yet. But the notion is, leave room for the answer. I trained McKinsey consultants in New York for a better part of a decade. The biggest problem was that last arrow that said implement. Oh, that's a hard arrow. It's not just implement. Implement is hard, right? If it was easy, they'd be doing it. Is everybody following us? And finally, remember the DeGraff hypothesis. They'll probably put this on my gravestone. Out of all the stuff I've done in my life, the amount of innovation an organization produces is inversely related to the number of stupid PowerPoint slides, mea culpa, or elaborate process diagrams it makes about innovation. In the words of our friend Phil Nike, just do it. I've left you some resources. I'm going to make this PDF available to everybody. There's a number of videos and resources and some technical stuff on here if you're interested. Everybody have a great Collider. Thanks for having me out, Tony and Matthew. Let's do it.
Thank you, Jeff, very much. All right, so here to kick things off and to get things going. So this picture of a U-2 pilot and his crew. And so it takes a team to get this stuff done. So no one can do it alone. Even though the U-2 pilot flies alone over 60,000 feet by himself, he has a team of folks, even though they're not there in the cockpit with him. So remember that. Build those teams. So to get things kicked off, got to go over some housekeeping first. So Capital Factory, it's on 3 floors, if you haven't noticed yet. So we're on the 1st floor right now, 8th floor, 16th floor. Those are the 3 floors of activities. The elevator system here is different from elevators you've probably used in other places. And so there's going to be Capital Factory employees around that are going to help you around the elevator system, and then also to the different rooms. And if everybody has their lanyard, look on the back of it, that is the schedule of events. And so we'll try to stay true to this, but you can see the name of a room and then also the floor it's on. So, for example, there's something in Antone's on the 16th floor. So just follow this as your map. And then Capital Factory employees will help you to the specific rooms. Food and drink. You're on your own. There's some nice stuff set up at the Omni Hotel here, so use that. And then also there's a lot of local restaurants within walking distance. You're in Austin, great food, so enjoy it. But you're on your own for food and drink. If you need help, ask a Capital Factory employee or AFWERX personnel. You're going to see them with their shirts on, either an AFWERX shirt, so I got one like that, or a Capital Factory shirt. They'll be helpful, and they're there to help you. This is an active office space, so be respectful of that. If you see a space where it looks like people are working on something, they probably are. So it's mostly on the 16th floor, but the 8th floor also, there's office spaces from other DoD organizations. But I would say and encourage to go explore those places. So NGA is here, DIU is here, Army Application Lab is here. There's other people other than AFWERX here, so go introduce yourself, mingle with them. However, be respectful that this is their office space too. Mini kitchens. All right, you're going to see a lot of them out there. Those are for Capital Factory members only, so please be respectful of that. And then finally, OPSEC, security, and classification. All right, so for the military members, so let's talk about colors of lanyards. All right, blue. Blue is DoD, or government, all right? So just be mindful of OPSEC as you interact with companies. We want everybody to be open, but just take reasonable OPSEC precautions. Security, this goes to everybody. If you guys see something that's weird, talk to a Capital Factory person, talk to an AFWERX person. We have security professionals around that we can get a hold of, but if you guys see something weird, need to report something, please tell someone. And then classification. All this is unclassified. If someone sees a conversation or wants to take something into the classified world, we can do that later on. We can build that into the contract, but just remember that this environment, Capital Factory itself, does not have classified workspaces, so we'll have to go to other locations in order to have those conversations. All right, rules of engagement. All right, on the Sbir crawl, so trade show called the Sbir crawl just to make it a little bit more exciting sounding. All right, so just all the companies are current phase 1 companies, so they're under contract. So what that means for government people, you can have those more detailed conversations with these companies. You can work with them immediately, actually. It's really cool setup that we front-loaded the work on the contracting and finance space in order for you to have very meaningful conversations and work with them immediately on towards their phase 2 applications. All right, no is the second best answer. All right, so look, some things just aren't going to be a match, right? And so instead of just saying, oh, that's cool, let's get in touch later, and this is on both sides of the coin, respect other people's time. So if it's just not going anywhere, you can still be friends, but hey, let's move on and go to something else. So no is the second best answer. Yes, obviously being the first. Collaborate within your own kind. So lanyard colors, so blue, DoD, but there's multiple different sub-organizations within the DoD. So you have bases here, you have MAGCOMs here, you have program offices here. So talk within your own kind. So red are the Sbir companies, all right? So we have a lot of red. Collaborate amongst your various Sbir companies. Maybe there's a collaboration opportunity amongst your technologies. And then orange, you're going to see a lot of orange. Those are non-government. So there are a lot of current phase 2 companies out there that are wearing orange lanyards. So those are opportunities, too, for phase 3 transition. And then also, obviously, intermingle the colors, too. And then finally, learn something and have fun. I mean, if you're not having fun, we set the bar pretty low, meet one other person. It seems like everybody already did that, right? So now it's all icing and gravy. And so have fun. All right, so quickly go after the breakouts today. So realize the breakouts you're going to see on the back of your lanyard, but just a brief description of them. Breakout 1 is Sbir 101 for government. So if you're a government person and don't understand the Sbir process, if I say Sbir and you're thinking space-based infrared, maybe you should stay around for that one, all right? Breakout 2 is up on the 16th floor, I believe, but look in the back of your thing. So BM&T, they do problem curation. They are going to do rapid problem extraction for people that are trying to better understand their problem. Really cool thing. They had a list of all the companies there. They'll help you extract that problem and then turn it into companies you should talk to while you're here at the Collider event. Number 3, Tiger, you in the room? Oh, don't see Tiger. All right, so this is a private working group, but yeah, so it's with the 19th Air Force Innovation Group. Number 4, if you're just interested in the DoD innovation ecosystem and AFWERX, that's going to be a good breakout session for you. Number 5 is in the afternoon. This is going to be interesting to a lot of companies. So this is Sbir 101 for companies. So what they're going to walk through is your phase 1 journey, what you should be looking at, what you should be doing. There's going to be a successful phase 2 company transition here on stage with Matthew, and they're going to be going through that. So that'll help educate you on next steps. 6, again, BM&T is doing 2 sessions, so a morning session, an afternoon session. So another problem extraction and solution finding event. Breakout 7, our friends at Eastern Foundry are leading a breakout group. Again, this is private, but for Sbir feedback for companies. But if you're interested in that, Eastern Foundry is who you should talk to. And then number 8, the program office. All right, so innovation through the lens of the program office. So just like Jeff talked about, how do you actually on-ramp into the traditional system, one of those competing values, those organizations that traditionally hold the processes and the keys to it. So it's going to be innovation through the program office lens. So that's a synopsis of the breakout sessions. And then finally, at the end of the day, we're going to have so company pitches throughout the day. So anytime Voltron is not being used for a breakout, there's going to be company pitches here. There's also going to be company pitches at our AFWERX office just on the other side of the atrium. All right, so if you're a company, you've been scheduled for that, you have your time slot. If you have any questions with that, talk to Mary Ann or Mark from the Capital Factory team. And then we're going to end the day with a panel discussion about the symbiosis between startups, VCs, and the DoD. This is a really interesting panel that we're going to have. What I would say is we live stream this also to the 8th floor, so obviously it's pretty cozy in here right now. There's a lot of people. And so you can see that panel discussion either here in Voltron or on the 8th floor in the DoD space. Day 2, there's going to be company pitches throughout. And then for the Air Force folks, we're going to do a capstone pitch or brief event at the end of day 2. So if you have a problem that you want sponsorship for, we have some money. We're going to listen to, we have about an hour and a half, so looking at about 9 problems. So get with me, fill out that Google form that we sent out earlier. But we really just want to hear, what's your problem? What's the impact if solved? And what is your commitment of it getting solved? That's all we want to hear. And if if we believe in what you're talking about, we have money that we can give you in order to attach to a Sbir Phase 2 MOU. So that's an open opportunity for all Air Force folks. All right. So with that, the kickoff for the Spark Collider is complete. The first breakout started about 10:30, and then the Sbir crawl starts right away. So thank you very much for your attention and being here, and have a great 2 days. Thank you.
ahead.
Matthew, okay.
He says I'm stuck in Dallas trying to catch a flight. Danielle?
Ken Yale. And he'll be confused.
Okay.
I'll tell you why later.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, thank you.
Long story short, it was one of those Ask Me Anything.
Yes.
And I was asking a question. And he says, that's fine, call me later. So he doesn't know me. But he knows my son, who's Ken Yale. And so he thought it was his colleague, my son, who's a major in the Air Force, and asking me stupid questions. He said, call me later. I don't have this guy's phone number.
Gotcha.
So I'm gonna have to say, hey, sorry I didn't call you 2 months ago, but I didn't have his phone number. And I didn't ask my son because it may have been a procurement issue, because I didn't want it to be looking like, there was some going around the so I just let it go.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you
Good to
very
meet you.
much. Yes. Hello. Is this working right now? Nope.
Yes, absolutely. I do. Let me just do this really fast and then. Mic check, mic check. Mic check, mic check. Right? Mic check, mic check.
Working on issues with the handheld microphones in Voltron. Okay. All right, fine.
No, it's different frequencies.
Ryan's on his way. Yeah, I don't know how that would have. Test, test. Here, give me 1 second. Test, 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 test.
Mic check, mic check.
So it's clearly getting something down there.
Check, check, check.
Do we just need a volume?
Check 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2.
I'm gonna get out of the way. I'm no help.
Testing 1 2 1 2.
What in the hell?
Test 1 2. Test check 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2.
Yeah, they were just working.
It doesn't have anything to do with this, does it? This was his.
Test check 1 2 1 2. Testing 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2.
Okay.
Testing 1 2 1 2.
Have we plugged anything in since the last?
Test 1 2 1 2. Check 1 2.
Just the presentation on the laptop.
Checking 1 2 1 2.
Hang on 1 second. Let me. know it's coming out. That's why I'm confused right now. Hey Siri, turn on my flashlight.
Test, test, 1 2 1 2.
It's just not coming out of the speakers.
Why is that?
Huh?
Why would that be?
Test, test, 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Testing 1 2.
Again, I'm getting a signal.
Test, test, test.
Test 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Test, test, 1 2 1 2. Testing 1 2.
You'd be able to hear it for sure.
1 2. Testing 1 2.
It's just not outputting to the speakers for some reason. All this is working. That's why I'm confused.
Test, test, 1 2 1 2 1 2.
that's going to add that sustainment tail after a phase 2. And another interesting thing where we're going is if we bring in all these phase 1s, the idea is if you do have a mature enough product or service, anyone can now go to you and do sole sourcing phase 3 products. So that sort of circumvents some of the contracting mechanisms by using SBI or authorities to bring it on. So we want to start focusing in the future on phase 3 for bringing in companies that can have products to go to phase 3s, and then the focus area leaders will that really truly need some research and development will do phase 2 work with them. And then now Dr. Roper wanted to concentrate on these pitch days. Go a couple slides forward. Couple more. It's doing 2 more, please. And those are just some. For this, it's just some of the online tutorials that are available. There's also tutorials on the SBR website that talks about So this is just a summary of, hey, allocated. So our phase 1 application is consistent like this. We mirror it as if you're going to go do a DC 50 talk about what your product is, what your customer is, what kind of traffic you're having. Up to a 5-page technical document, but we're even playing around with this is not this is channel 1. That's like channel output. The information we want you to have. As we would rather that actually be less than we would put as a company more into
It's gonna work.
so what does that mean for you? Is that we're trying to get the message out to companies that in that pitch deck, they really need to talk about what their technology actually is and how it applies to the DoD. That way, during that phase 1, we can offer those those materials to all the DoD members to say, hey, is this something that you really want to start a conversation?
What?
And then phase 2,
The fire override that they did.
I think. And then up to 15 pages of technical volume, just to go a little bit more into the technical realm, because that's going to be more prevalent. The model we're going to is at the pitch stage, they're actually bringing in no-hitting experts in the focus areas, and then start looking at evaluating more of that tech process. Phase 1 is more of a commercial evaluation to see, hey, do you think you have some commercial viability in the risk of that? Oh, yeah, go. Oh, yes, thank you for asking that. So, traditional ministerial performance has been phase 1.
Yep. That's what it was.
Phase 2 traditional has been up to. How's this work? Oh, perfect, finally. I know, thank you. Phase 2 traditional has been a 12-month period of performance, up to $750,000 of just SBIR funds. What we did is also wanted to incentivize private capital. How do we leverage private capital? In addition, how do we further incentivize DoD members to get buy-in into these companies, to really see the success of them to go to a phase 3? So we offered up leveraging. So a private company can come in up to 1.5 million, and we'll match them in SBIR dollars for 1-for-1. So essentially, they would have $3 million to contribute towards a phase 2 towards that unit or that warfighter who they're going after on that. Now, for what we did for the government is if it was a newer company, again, it's about incentivizing newer companies coming in, we would honor 4-to-1 matching. So if a unit said, I have $375,000, we'll 4-to-1 match that. We'll provide 1.5, and then they'll tack on the 375, so they'll have a $1.875 million contract. In addition, what we can do as far as DoD members working with DoD is say you're a program office and say, hey, I want to use your vehicle to tack on $5 million. You can use our vehicle to do that. So we'll provide the 1.5 million of SBIR, but we'll write a contract for 6.5 million to do that prototyping for phase 2. So that capability is built in. Go ahead.
I got a couple questions. The 375 in the past when we worked with AFWERX, it had to be R&D 3600.
Thank you. Yep.
So for operational units, it's really hard to come.
Absolutely.
Have you guys looked at that?
Yeah, we fixed it for this 19.3. So we realized because the Air Force offered those SIF funds, and those were supposed to be, utilized towards these companies, but those were $3,400. And so we were like, we originally thought we were going to get approval. We're constantly behind the scenes pushing the envelope. We're constantly trying to get things approved. So we actually thought we were going to get that approved. We didn't, to get the 3,400 approved. So we tried to pivot really fast to utilize GSA contracts on that. And that arrangement didn't quite work out. So a lot of units didn't get to utilize the 3,400. But just to let you know, if you went into a phase 2 and you wanted to utilize 375,000, the leverage funds, and you actually signed that commitment that you would try and get that money, we honored it. So we actually gave companies 1.5 million with an option of the 375 in addition to that, knowing full well that the 375 probably wouldn't be added on. So the warfighter at least got 1.5 million. That's going to change a little bit for this next instructions. We're actually, during this working group today and tomorrow, we're going over the new instructions. 23 August is 19.3 pre-release. It's coming quickly. It's actually going to be a 2-to-1 matching for government, so we're going to lower it a little bit, but it's all colors of money that we'll be able to utilize. So that won't be an issue anymore that you have to have 3,600 money. We'll be able to use any of those for there. Any other questions? Really? Yes?
Can you speak to data rights, whatever they make in these programs?
Yes. Yeah, so thank you. So really for phase 1, there's really no reason to assert data rights because you're just doing business development. You're just trying to find a product. Now for phase 2, if you're a company and you want to assert data rights, you're just going to start negotiations with a contracting officer and figure out, just a minute, figure out exactly what you're going to assert data rights on. Because here's the ultimate goal of us, is that's why we emphasize commercial dual-use technologies, because whatever you come in with as commercial product, your technology, your IP, everything is yours. I mean, we want you to grow. So really what we care about is that adaption piece. As you're adapting a product for the warfighter, we don't want you to leave 12 months later and take all the data with you that you adapted just for the warfighter to use, because now there's nothing for them to use because you asserted all your rights for them. So that's why it's a conversation to assert just certain portions exactly what you need. And what my experience has been since working with a startup since 18.2 in this SBR, it's just a messaging. If you just truly talk to them and saying, hey, this is really the pieces. What pieces do you actually need to assert data rights on? Because there are some things that we would like to keep that's geared just towards us. And then we can also talk, what is your ultimate goal? Is your ultimate goal that you're just going to provide service subscription or something, leasing, licensing or something on the back end of that? Because we'll factor that in too. So it's basically a conversation on that. Yes, so I did, SOCOM is actually a big, they're my new best friend because they can put it in the field immediately. So we did 2 to 3 contracts this last round where they put in additional funds on top of, because they have this whole game plan. And here's something that you don't realize that you can work with these companies on, is when we do leveraged funds, it's up to 24 months. So what SOCOM did is said, well, okay, hey, company, can you scale and deliver this capability of leveraged funds? Can you spend $3.5 million in 12 months or 10 months? Because I want to do a plan where I do something else on the back end of that and do another a statement of work to try and get you to going on to build out my vision of your capability. So that's stuff that we can work on. Right now, technically, you can't have simultaneous phase twos within our special topic. So that gets very confusing. But basically, if it's an AFWERX special topic, you cannot have simultaneous phase two. You can have with another organization, as we showed on that chart, there's multiple organizations doing SBIR. You can have a phase two with them, it's just within ours. But what you can do is you can structure your work where, and this is what some of the companies with SOCOM is doing, is they are doing a 9-month period and then going to plan to apply sequentially. We don't usually encourage that behavior, but we will do it if the user and customer are bringing extra funds that we want to leverage, because that is providing the incentive that we want. They're buying into that company to continue to work in leveraging some of those funds. That's why I think some of that, why we'll go to 2-to-1 necessarily, but that will actually be 1-to-1 in the future because they've already had a phase two within our system on that. Any other questions on there? Let's see if this actually works. Who wants to bet on this? Oh, look. So here's 18.2. I just want to quickly touch a little bit on this. So this is 18.2. Actually happened here when we were given a charge by Dr. Roper. Hey, can you deliver 40 contracts in 40 hours? So we brought together those contracting officers and some of the SBR team here in Austin, and literally this is what we had to make shifts on trying to get stuff done, and those are some of the contraptions that we had to rig up to keep the computers running and not overheating and some charged, and to make it happen. And we demonstrated this is possible. And starting with 40, and now this has just happened in Boston for 19.2, and we had over 60 contracting officers. All in all, by this Friday, we're going to deliver about 500 contracts, and then over, I think, about 40-ish million awarded just in this one sprint, and we do 3 of these a year. The demand is there. We didn't realize the demand was going to be so big for this one, so that's why we actually got a flat tire during this process, and some of the companies are like, I didn't get my contract, because they're so used to us giving contract immediately when we say we were going to give it, so we just had to delay it a week. And people still get very upset, by the way, for doing. And then I also wanted to talk on, this is just, again, this doesn't have the updated numbers for 19.2 because they're not fully released for that, but in February, 75 million, we're now to 218 companies. That's total companies. 125 of those were phase ones. Now, just phase ones alone are 321 companies, and for a total dollar amount of about 140 million. So we're getting close to doubling that, and more than, it's going to be the largest cohort in the number of contracts awarded in the SBR system. Yes? Great question. So if you're in an active phase 2, you can have multiple phase 3s in parallel. So that's one of the things that we're being encouraged to message. So say a company, has a derivative of their product, but their commercial product is set, and they're just adapting a piece of that. As long as it's logically connected, and the contracting officer and the technical team can make that evaluation, but you can go to phase 3 on that. And we're haven't confirmed it yet, but we're pushing for even phase 3 will leverage. And then also what we're adding on are called enhancements. That was the old term. That term doesn't exist anymore, but for a lack of a better term, we have now. So a phase 2 currently right now, if you have a user that comes along and says, I want to join this phase 2 on an ongoing basis, they can apply to do that. And so right now, it's a 1-for-1 match. You do have to bring funds to match on. We're still toying around with what the upper limit is on the SBIR dollars that we'll match to on that.
Under the 19.3 color money construct,
Yes.
so I can use 3,400. If another user wants to add on to the phase 2, I'll be able to use 3,400 money of that user to attach.
Yes. Yes. And then what they'll do is when they mod, because they're going to have to mod the contract anyways for that, is they'll probably convert it or do something for that. But that's what the guidance says right now. Yes. Yes. Yes, so for the rapid previously, in 19.2, the way it just ended is if you brought in, say, as a government, 200,000, 4-to-1, we would match to 800 and then plus that 200, so we'd write a contract for 1 million. That's what it is. What we're toying with right now is the 2-for-1, but there's going to be min thresholds. So say a unit, because we want to incentivize units with not even a lot of money. So if they bring in 50,000 or something, it's a 2-to-1, but instead of maybe writing 150, maybe there's a min threshold of 250. We're still making that decision right now. So they at least, it's always a minimum base of 250 no matter what, or 300. We're still deciding that. Even if the options don't even come. So even if the funding falls through for some whatever reasons, they'll still get some kind of base.
So that's a little bit, I'd say confusing bit. So if a unit doesn't bring any matching funds at all, they'll make apply for 750. So why only 15 give?
They're actually, I think, going to lower the traditional to incentivize rapid. This is all about getting buy-in from the government and the sustainment offices, and then incentivize venture capitalists and other private investors to start pushing their portfolio companies to us and have buy-in in this process. So that traditional, I think, is actually going to get lowered to 500,000 this round. Nothing is, that's what's expected. We're deciding that over the next couple of days. Yes. Yes. Yes, so for phase 1, so let's take these 321 companies. If they put in, they actually put in a cost estimate, but mostly everyone just maxes it out at 50,000. So they're awarded SBIR dollars, 50,000, and it's basically just money so they can pay for items to help with business development. Here's an example. One company said, hey, we want to develop internally an adaptive app that sort of displays what we want to do for phase 2, so we can interact with the customers. So they only wanted to spend about $10,000 doing that of that 50,000, and we said that's fine because it's helping the business development. So it's just they can use that money to make the videos because we require a 100-second video. For phase 2, they can use that money for there. So it's basically their money. It's a fixed contract, fixed pricing contract, that they just use that money to aid in their business development. Any other questions on there? Then, so this is the new construct right here that we're working towards. Is, AFWERX and with SBIR and, in the PEO offices, we get together, and AFWERX is helping to bring the funnel in messaging out what the users want, what the sustainment offices want, program offices want, to get those companies in. And then for this 19.2 is I actually had about 60 government advisors work with us on these companies. So I reviewed all the companies that applied in my team, but then we had these focus areas bring in their teams to provide a list and recommendations and insight on from their point of view, because on the back end of that is really just a pitch day that they're going to run, that they're going to invite the companies to, from those phase ones, to see if they can award a phase two, and that's basically what the pitch day is. This is what the model's going to. So what you're going to see, and here's an interesting thing. So if you're a government user and you want to do a pitch day, you can do it within 2 weeks of being awarded. So that's why we did this collider here, is because now you can start having those conversations or having that ability to put people on contract. Also, what hasn't been messaged that I'm going to start messaging is, and I got approval, is say you don't want to wait to the 3 months to put them on phase two. That's okay. We can work with you and put them on earlier. They'll still have that base period of performance because they can find phase three users or something, or maybe additional people to bring on to their phase two for enhancements, but that you can award them earlier, and you don't even need a pitch day. It's just if you want to work with them, we can help you to get them onto a phase two. And so that's really what the PO evaluation and teams are, is they're bringing a team to these pitch days to really dig into the company's technology to validate, okay, we think this has something there, now let's throw a phase two on top of that. And then anything left over as far as companies that didn't get any pitch days, but they did find users, AFWERX as a team will evaluate at the end of that performance period at the 3 months to see if they want to go on to a phase two and put those selections. So some ways that you can get involved in on this. At a bare minimum, you have a needs ID through IdeaScale that we use. And you just put your problem on there, and it tags you with a digit code. And then that is posted on the Sbir website, and they are able to put that into their pitch days. In their pitch documents. And we're able to match that up and then send it out to you after they're awarded to say, hey, you're matched up with this, start your conversation. At a low effort is their ultimate goal in order to apply for phase two is getting a signed MOU. That's not legally obligating you to anything. It's not financial obligation. It's nothing of that sort. What that is merely stating is, hey, we would like to work with this company during phase two. We would like to sponsor them, and that company is going to deliver us deliverables, and we'll accept or reject those deliverables and let you know so they can get paid. Yes? No. It's minimal. No, you don't. We would like to. We assess the what we call the transition and the commercialization and all of that within the DoD as more of the valuation piece. But during that was in the conversations when you start having with the company, we're going to start having those conversations with you in the company of, okay, what network do you have? Who are the other people that you can bring into this process that may have the sustainment dollars on the back end? Because we'll always take traditional applications, which means it's fully funded by SBIR dollars only to help out units. Does that make sense? Okay. So at a very low effort is being actually an MOU signer, is signing up to work with these units. That's what we're asking from people. Once they're on a phase one contract, they are on Air Force contract, they can legally talk to everyone. You can have those conversations. I would go ahead, bring in your contracting shop, bring in your legal if you want. That's we encourage it, but you can legally sign that MOU. There's nothing wrong. It's not obligating you to anything. And guess what? Say you PCS or you change jobs, you just hand that duty off to someone else and you just let us know. It's a very easy process for that. And then medium is it's just the matching of funds. Is you're bringing funds that we can sort of leverage and match. And then a high-level effort is, hey, you want to do a whole pitch day, and yes. It rolls over, yes. Because the idea is that hopefully, if you want to update it, you can always update it or submit a new one. There's no problem in that. And then a couple of parting things I wanted to talk about, what's coming next and on the horizon. Dr. Roper's also going to make some announcements tomorrow, so I don't want to steal what he's going to talk about. But for 20.1, we are doing experimenting with what's called a joint SBIR. So we're getting buy-in from the Army, Navy, SOCOM. We're trying to get I think we're making progress with the NGA and then some other organizations where we come together in this joint. So now now companies don't have to find an Air Force customer, it's a DoD customer. And now we can sort of, instead of having so many parallel efforts, we can start merging some of these efforts together and say, hey, this is more of an Army, go ahead and do this. For instance, we have a couple of companies now that technically have an Air Force user, but it's really, the Army wants to utilize that to validate for them. So that's one of the hurdles we're getting around to with this joint, is now we can, hey, no kidding, you found a Marine user or Army, we can bring you in and help you out that way. And then the valuations and the money coming to the table, it's a larger pot. So what we're also experimenting around with, this is not approved, it's what we're trying to do. It's called mega phase twos. So we're trying to do an uncapped phase two, where we'll match 1-for-1. So if a private investor brings in 10 million, we'll match them 10 million. That's me being conservative. If you were to ask Dr. Roper or someone, that they would probably give you higher leveraging. But the reasoning for that is that it's not going to be widespread, but for programs that involve space, these companies need a lot of capital to really do an experiment. And they have a lot of venture capital, like multi-millions of dollars fed into them. So we might as well incentivize them to work with us and be able to truly do a phase two experiment. So that's really more of what those companies are geared towards. So hopefully we can get that approved and showcase that at the end. So technically I think that would be 20.2 is when the 20.1 phase ones would go up for phase two and have those, it will be a pitch competition of that sort, yeah. Yep. So the instructions for that are going to come out within 2 weeks, and there's going to be an application process for the company along with the person that's putting in that money to scale up on that. Yes.
The joint topic that you were talking
yes.
about, is that going to be run through AFWERX? And briefly with questions because you can't have multiple phase twos. If I had already asked a question.
Great question. It's going to be run through AFWERX, but maybe for that, I'll bring that up, that since we're doing the joint, that maybe we need to get rid of that restriction on that for the 20. But that's also for 20.1 that we're working on right now. Great, that's a good question. Any other question? Oh, yes. Yes. Absolutely. So that's one of the things that we're all trying to figure out. So we actually have a master list of all the SBIR companies, and then I have a list of the phase ones, and we're trying to find the best way to display that information. So I right now can send it to you one-on-one. I'm also trying to put it on the myaf.mil, but that only hits Air Force. So what? Okay. No, that's the ones here, but I'm talking all the phase ones. And previous phase twos, like concurrent phase twos. We have all the information, we just haven't been able to send out. One of our new initiatives, hopefully they know because we're going to reach out to them, is to try and put it on Insyn's platform of their website, because they have a bunch of portfolios. So we're trying to investigate putting it on their website that they control so you can search up any SBIR company. So we're trying to actively get there. There's not a real easy method for doing that right now besides just we email you a list of Excel list. There are some portfolios on the AFWERX website, but it's still a process to look through, and it's not as easy. There are companies right now in the phase 2 process that are working with us to matchmake. So that's actually what BMT is doing. They have an application where they can extract problems and will automatically match up to some of the DoD users or what they suggested DoD users that you can look at. Yes?
Typically, what is the annual revenue of this phase 1 companies? Do you have a data on the average annual revenue?
I personally don't have that data. I think Steve Lauer does. But there is no, that's not something I look at and say, okay, you met this threshold. What I'm looking at is if you have more of an earlier stage company and you don't really, you're pre-revenue, what we do then is, okay, what kind of backers do you have then to assess who's having commercial buy-in into your company to bet on that you will succeed commercially. So it is hard and difficult if you don't have a developed product, you have no revenue, and then you have no other investments whatsoever. Those are going to be a lower priority on our ranking system for that. Any other questions on here? Yes.
Yeah, I do have a question. So we're about a 70% solution already, right? And actually, the original piece of the project was push through SparkTank, right?
Oh, okay.
Where is that prototype done? Was it phase 2 or phase 3? And is it a way to go from phase 1 maybe to phase 3 because you're already so far along in the process?
I'll speak on both of those. So you can, once you're in phase 1, you can go to phase 3 anytime. It's just how developed is your product. So what we're trying to do in the future is bring in more developed products. So that's what I alluded to about that 1,000 is ideally we want to bring in companies that we can put to phase 3 immediately. And we'll have that demand signal by the offices saying, hey, let's use this as a mechanism to throw on money as a sole sourcing contract. For prototyping, it's usually done with the unit that the customer, and then they'll have a manager, and that the manager can vary from all levels of who's the actual, we call them TPOCs, but who's in control of accepting or rejecting those deliverables. But we encourage the unit to be, this is a very hands-on program for the unit. We actually step out of it for phase 2. The only way we're involved in phase 2 is just a monthly meeting of just answering Q&A and then accepting what the unit tells me to accept as far as deliverables, just to get them paid. That's it. Phase 2. Phase 2. Any other questions on this? I think we're closing out soon. All right, great. It's 5 minutes till, oh, yep, go ahead.
Is it going to be okay to mix O&M and R&D money on these contracts if you're going to be able to allow 3,400 to be added to it now going forward?
Yes, they have a mechanism for doing that, yes. They're looking at that. And also, they're talking about, say you do a phase 3 and you're still adding on to a phase 2 because they're still trying to prototype that piece out, we'll still even honor some of that leveraging for the phase 3. And we're going to have some other things that are going to be announced as far as, there's going to be more contracting involvement from AFWERX and capability to train units and bases contracting, because that's sometimes we're going to have materials and classes, and one of the things I'm toying around with is having a phase 3 party, is along with these phase 2s, is actually bringing people in to, no kidding, let's sit them down and let's all write these phase 3s together so they can learn, because it's all about scaling. So we're constantly doing experiments to figure out how to scale. Any other questions from anyone? Perfect. Thank you very much. This is the end of this session, and then please go talk to as many companies as you can. And if you ever have any questions, just email me or the SBIR team, and we'll help you out on any way possible. Thank you.
There's business happening right now in AFWERX.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. We're about to get pitches started. If I could have the judges report to the front, we're going to go ahead and brief you on what's going to happen. If you're a Sbir company pitching, please meet me stage right if I haven't already spoken with you. Thank you. guys can share if you want.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah. You can just click it on when you're ready. Okay, I'm going to make an announcement. Try to out there. Try to.
I don't know. It might. Marianne's got the plan. So you based here in Austin with AFWERX or Las Vegas? Very cool.
Talked to a lot of the people in Las Vegas during the application.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Andrew, Shida, Zach Morris. I think they were like the Fusion Edge company.
Oh, yeah. I don't know everyone. There's so many like tentacles out there. AFWERX is one of them. I have to constantly refer to the person on the street when I'm looking for AFWERX. So it's kind of like, sometimes they just don't. They're like, oh, this is going to sell or one of the live contracts or something.
Yeah, these are a bit more technical than the companies I normally run into.
I was going to say, for investors, some good feedback. They really need somebody who's military.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Sbir pitches are about to begin. We're waiting on one judge to return. If you're a company that's going to pitch and I haven't spoken to you yet, after we get started, if you want to just meet me, I'll be in the back of the room. Hopefully everyone brought their laptop, but if not, I probably have your deck and my email.
Feedback questions?
Nope, we're just waiting on Craig and we're going to get started.
I'll look distracted because I'm taking notes on my phone.
Good. All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. First, thank you all for being here. Capital Factory is very excited to be a part of the AFWERX Spark Collider. Before we invite the companies up, I want to just reference our judges. Judges, more like our information specialists in the front row, and they will introduce themselves and tell them why they're here.
Hello, Brittany Martino. I'm from AFWERX Vegas. I am the Strategic Engagement Officer for that hub, and looking forward to hearing your guys' pitches.
How's it going, everybody? Jamie Katanak,